To date, the United States has provided Ukraine with strike munitions of various ranges, including ATACMS, JDAM-ER SDB, and Storm Shadow Honchar from other allies. On the battlefield, each of these munitions has addressed a distinct need. ERAM, or Extended Range Attack Munition, is now vying for the top spot on this list. These missiles are a relatively inexpensive, quickly produced, long-range attack weapon that is launched from air platforms, bridging the gap between standoff capabilities and mass production. Washington has authorized the sale of 3,350 ERAMs, and the first deliveries are anticipated to start in a few weeks. With the introduction of this new weapon, Ukraine will have the chance to improve the range and numerical capacity of its deep strike capabilities. Only a few dozen or a few hundred deep strike weapons were used in the prior arsenal. With ERAM, depth will now be determined by sustainability and quantity in addition to range. Consequently, it is worthwhile to center the analysis around a single sentence. The doctrine of inexpensive, numerous, and adequately distant weapons can be permanently included into Ukraine's arsenal via ERAM. Such a move would alter the frequency and rhythm of assaults in addition to broadening Ukraine's selection of targets. Individual surprises would no longer dictate the war's pace. Instead, regular repeated waves would do so. The delivery timeline and the approval's numerical scale are already giving off this vibe. The tangible facts are depicted in the figures. According to reports, the majority of the finance comes from European sources, and the package size is roughly $850 million, with 3,350 authorized in the first wave. Shipments are anticipated to occur in a fragmented yet quick rhythm, with a 6-week delivery timeframe. The Ukrainian Air Force can use this scale as a minimal cushion to schedule frequent standoff attacks for the remainder of the year. The quantity of ERAM seems to be the deciding factor even when the package contains other products. The announcement of the ERAM delivery plan to Ukraine following the conference further suggests that the military component has been postponed due to the political environment. However, it is important to note that Washington will conduct a review process before approving the use of the weapons. A target approval filter is introduced by this process, especially for ranges that target far within Russia. Therefore, the presence of an administrative constraint on the target spectrum must be considered in addition to quantity and range. This filter will act as a second screen for target type and geography when operations are being planned. The whole picture indicates a managed rollout, even with the brief delivery window. A closer look at this missile's history reveals some startling information. The foundation of ERAM is a quickly created and manufactured air-launched standoff program. In 2024, the U.S. Air Force requested bids for low-cost modular cruise weapons from a number of businesses through an RFI and an RFP. In contrast to traditional cruise missiles, the objective was to develop a mass-producible solution with adequate accuracy and range in a less expensive form. ERAM is valuable to Ukraine because it can be used as a mass weapon substitute for scarce and costly munitions. Prototypes matured quickly, and field-ready versions were available in short order according to program documentation. This strategy results in a supply model that adapts to the changing demands of conflict. In parallel, ERAM is developing a library of long-term lessons for the U.S. military structure. The ERAMs that Ukraine will get may also serve as test data for the U.S. inventory's low-cost multi-munitions idea. Consequently, the choice is a proof-of-concept trip rather than only an export. The reason ERAM is called the Star of the War can be explained by this approach. The fundamentals are obvious. With a 500-kilogram warhead, GPS navigation that works in a jammed environment, and a circular error probability value that is stated to be less than 10 meters, ERAM's range band is around 241 to 450 kilometers. These figures demonstrate that ERAM satisfies the accuracy threshold needed for operational requirements, even though it falls short of the precision of pricey cruise missiles. Targets like ammo depots, gasoline tanks, radars, command centers, and runway targets in Russia may be appropriate for ERAM's fragmentation warhead type, which has a particular armor-piercing capabilities. Although this missile's speed is not typically supersonic, when paired with the assault geometry and profile choices, it can pose a challenge to air defenses. ERAM shipments' low cost and high logic necessitate concentrating on the wave's overall impact, rather than on individual weapons. Therefore, rather than excellence per unit, ERAM's design philosophy depends on mass numbers and cost-effective adequacy. Maintaining minimal performance against Russian electronic warfare intensities is the goal of the GPS-resistant navigation kit. The intended effect on medium-hard fixed targets, including command and control buildings, is achieved in the final phase via terminal precision. The launching aircraft might be able to stay out of the S-300 and S-400 systems range, thanks to ERAM's long-range band. In addition to increasing range and quantity, this entire package improves survival. The ERAM platform problem seems to be serious and complex for Ukraine. In order to transport Western armaments, MiG-29s and Su-27s have already been equipped with specialized suspension arms and tablet-based interfaces. Su-24s are becoming a viable option for ERAM and have been used as carriers for Storm Shadow/SCALP missions. The F-16's presence gives this munition a more dependable mission platform and a more adaptable infrastructure for mission planning. The F-16 has more uniform maintenance, spare parts flow, network compatibility, and mission planning. The low-altitude profile and standoff launch scenarios improve survivability regardless of the platform. Multiple launches from various lanes on the same wave are feasible when network-centric targeting data is added. To cut down on radar exposure time, one can choose the flight profile and navigation quality. Establishing a rational division of work between the ERAM list and targets assigned to pricey cruise missiles is the proper strategy. ERAM is perfect for sensitive logistics nodes and medium-hardness fixed targets in this division of labor. Administrative target approval and current aircraft type avionics integration timetables will be the limitations. Air defense and the economics of munitions clash in ERAM's doctrine of usage, which might be seen as mass standoff suppression. The layers of Russian integrated air defense systems vary in thickness according to priority and geographic location. S-300/400 batteries are compelled to target costly targets with a restricted quantity of bullets. However, the response to glide bombs opens the way for mass pressure. The strategy of lowering the layers and dismantling the death chain produces more logical outcomes, according to RUSI's Joint Strike evaluations. ERAM is an example of a medium-cost, high-volume munition that can violate the one cruise missile per target criterion. The net damage left at the end of the wave is more important than the individual kill ratio. ERAM is thus placed on a different line, but within the same repertoire as Storm Shadow Scalp and ATAC Emis. A balanced picture is presented by establishing breadth and frequency with ERAM and depth with costly missiles. This image pushes the air defense's saturation threshold too soon. When the target set is specified, the impact of ERAM becomes more apparent. The aircraft profile carried within a 241 to 450 kilometer radius poses a threat to ammunition stores and railway connections along the Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk lines. There is strain on air-sea links like Yeysk and Primorsko-Akhtarsk on the Azov coast and Milarovo and Morozovsk in the Rostov region. Targets in Crimea include coastal petroleum stores, aviation bases like Saki and Gvardeyskoye, and the Jankoy logistical junction. In terms of support facilities outside the bridge, secondary logistics nodes in the Kerch Passage area are desirable targets. For the air-to-ground profile, Russia's fuel and energy storage facilities are high-impact, high-cost choices. The second layer of wave plans can include factory-level maintenance facilities and Russian command and control buildings. This idea naturally targets the nerve centers of Russia's war economy rather than urban areas. Both the economics of ammunition and the laws of war support this strategy. Low-risk, high-frequency pressure production is the aim. Russian air defenses surrounding Crimea could be gradually undermined, as demonstrated by Ukraine's prior deep strike missions. In particular, radar and launcher combinations were worn down by long-range missiles and waves of UAVs launched at S-300/400 batteries. Losses in air defense hit unprecedented heights in certain months, creating a window for more air missions. At the same time, regular pressure was applied on aircraft parking lots and air bases. This pressure becomes more sustainable with the inclusion of ERAM. This is due to the fact that the combination of costly and scarce missiles with inexpensive and plentiful ammunition makes it more difficult to determine which tier of defense should be used. The Russian Defense Command is more likely to make blunders when the number of possibilities increases. Every opening surrounding Crimea eventually serves as a starting point for new missions. As a result, a sequence of waves rather than a single wave is being explored. Lack of repair and spare components creates a new vulnerability when ERAMs damage the Russian military infrastructure. Railway connections and supply lines are crucial in the northern region. The first candidates to come within ERAM's range are the sizable storage spaces and makeshift ammo depots located around Belgorod. When the air threat rises, land convoys are burdened more by lines towards Kursk and Bryansk. As a result, road conditions and seasonality affect the Russian army's transportation planning. The rhythm of the front line is disturbed by regular but brief disruptions to train lines. Convoy tempo slows when locomotive maintenance sites and fuel depots are hit. Attrition-focused operations on the eastern and southern fronts of Ukraine are made possible by this scenario. This standoff ammunition generates planned pressure even in bad weather. In logistics, there is no margin of safety when quantity and range are combined. Due to this lack, Russian leadership takes a cautious approach. However, the Russian air defense's reaction to ERAM reaches administrative and technical limits. Geographical factors determine the quantity of S-300/400s and firing stocks, which leads to the neglect of some industries. Only the capital and strategic bases can have 100% thick layers. When the radar fire control chain is pushed into a frequent attack cycle on distant fronts, the mistake rate rises. Although GPS jamming attempts in electronic warfare will continue to have an influence, ERAM's architecture aims to provide adequate accuracy in the face of these threats. The parties have started using mass munitions to measure defense economics, as demonstrated by CSIS and related studies. Saving a target with a single shot is getting harder and harder in current economy. The benefit of ERAM from Ukraine's point of view is that the wave cost may be less than the defense cost. At that point, the outcome is the net damage left at the conclusion of the wave rather than the proportion of individual interceptions. As a result, defense mechanisms are also mentally weakened. Additionally, the administrative filter needs to be considered. For months, the use of American-made ammunition within Russia was restricted by the Pentagon's high-level vetting process. It is stressed that the new ERAM set will also be subject to the pre-approval requirement. This approach creates a buffer between military needs and political objectives. Therefore, Ukraine's planning needs to be done in two ways, specifically the permission screen located in Washington and the target list on the ground. However, Europe's finance role for ERAM does not circumvent the target approval chain. Rather, it speeds up the package flow. This arrangement seeks to increase volume for Ukraine while maintaining control over the escalation in Washington. Consequently, ERAM's strategic importance is determined by its regime of usage as well as its range and numbers. The wave rhythm is a direct reflection of your filter's logic. The target map will be centered around Crimea and closer to the borderlines as long as the limitations are in effect. These areas will also account for a sizable amount of the outcomes on the ground. Naturally, the significant and permanent effects of ERAM purchase on Russia must also be addressed. Although the Russian side's long-range strike capability has improved, it is still costly and has monthly manufacturing tempo restrictions. Concerns about sustainability emerge when one compares Russia's output and stock levels with field consumption. Ukraine's decision to switch to inexpensive standoff weapons like ERAM makes sense as a way to get the upper hand. ERAM places a heavy resource load on the Kremlin by keeping Russia's vast air defense network continuously on alert. The combination of range units makes the Russian side always alert in terms of air imaging, radar, energy, and logistics. Other operational axes receive less attention and resources as a result of this monitoring. The strategy for Ukraine seems to be to generate constant pressure with frequent waves rather than chasing significant moments with costly single shots. The air defense commander is more likely to make a mistake as a result. The second wave on the same day has a significantly greater impact after an error enters the chain. This second wave concept is made possible every day by the ERAM's numerical scale. There is no one answer that can be used to dismiss the issue of how effective Russian air defense is against ERAM. Low-altitude approaches reduce the detection and engagement window, and choosing an engagement in numerous waves raises the mistake rate. The navigation package may be put to the test by electronic warfare, although ERAM's design aims to preserve enough accuracy in the face of such strain. Command structures and fuel depots can achieve good results with a 10-meter CIP on stationary and big targets. The S-300/400's fire control is pushed to favor valuable targets by the speed and RCS parameters. This implies that mixed waves of glide munitions and UAVs provide challenges for the defense. The second half of the wave picks a simpler route when defense encounters a problem. Even though this cycle lasts only a few days, it changes field behavior. Another risk is the increased mobility of radar and launchers. For planned attacks, moving systems become more predictable. ERAM fills the void when one considers Ukraine's previously employed munitions set. Even before the F-16, JDAM, ER, and SDB were successful in a range of 40 to 45 miles and achieved results through integration. Though costly and well-chosen, Storm Shadow/Scalp produced strategic impact on deep targets. When ATACMS hit runway objectives and air defense batteries, it created a clean window on the battlefield. This trio's shared weakness was either administrative, financial, or quantitative limitations. As a compromise solution along these three axes, ERAM completes the picture. On the outcome front, the broad picture is obvious. ERAM provides Ukraine with an affordable standoff tool that increases both quantity and depth. We may see regular waves on the field before the year is out, thanks to the missile's allowed amount and short delivery time frame. In Crimea and around the borders, pressure will rise despite administrative screening of the usage regime. The ability of the Russian air defense to keep up with this pace may make planning and resource issues worse. Although the electronic warfare effect won't completely vanish, ERAM's design objectives are to preserve the bare minimum of accuracy in the face of such strain. The primary distinction with ERAM is that rhythm is produced by the change from scarce and costly to plentiful and adequate. At the same time, rhythm drains the opponent's finances and spirits. In this regard, ERAM serves as a strategic pressure tool against Russia in addition to being an operational weapon for Ukraine. I appreciate you watching.